what's up, my friends? Sakshi Zion here, and what a blessing to be sharing this live today with you. I have a reading I want to share, contemplating the parable of the sower, one of the greatest parables by Yeshua. So I'm going to be reading from a commentary from Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, from his book, The Second Coming of Christ, the resurrection of the Christ within you. The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat. And the whole multitude stood on the shore, and he spoke many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But others fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Matthew 13:1-9. And now this is the commentary by Yogananda. In the well-known parable of the sower, the seed and the ground, Jesus illustrates how divine seeds of truth grow or perish according to the mental soil or faith and receptivity of the spiritual aspirants on whom the seeds have been sown. Hearken attentively with wisdom to the truth that here among you are devotees with varying degrees of receptive minds on which have been sown the seeds of my teachings. Some seeds of truth fell by the wayside of the spiritual indifference of curiosity seekers. Those seeds of potentially enlightening intuitional experiences were trodden by the animals of material habits and devoured by the fowls of doubts flying in the atmosphere of the mind. So he's saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow, and when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them. So he's saying, in this respect, that's referring to people who, when the truth is heard, they're more showing a spiritual indifference to that truth. They're more like curiosity seekers. And those seeds of potentially enlightening experiences were trodden by the animals, the fowls of doubts flying in the atmosphere of the mind. The animals or fowls of material habits. Next he says, some seeds of my teachings fell upon the rocky terrain of materially crude minds with only a little soil of skin-deep spiritual perception and appreciation. In such persons, the teaching sprouted into some short-lived but not deep-rooted spiritual experiences. When the sun of daily material habits rose, those experiences were fatally scorched because they did not form deep-rooted habits in the superconsciousness of the soul. They withered away due to the lack of nourishment, of continued devotion and spiritual aspiration in new acts of meditation and fervent effort. So in this time, he's saying, some fell upon the stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up. But because they had no deepness of earth, and when the sun was up, they were scorched. And because they had no root, they withered away. So he's saying this is like people who, when they hear the truth, the teachings take root a little bit, but because they didn't root deeply into that person, when their material habits rose again, those little sprouts were scorched by the sun, and they didn't last, basically, because they weren't as deeply rooted into that person yet. He may have heard the truth, those seeds of truth, and they started to sprout, but because he didn't really cultivate that that continued practice and that continued devotion, those deep roots weren't established. So when, the distractions of this material world came again, he was easily swayed by those. The spiritual seeds weren't able to help him at that point. Next, it's saying, and some seeds of my teachings were sown on the mental soil of persons filled with prolific thorns of spiritual distrust and theological doubts. Though those seeds sprouted somewhat in such theoretically inquisitive minds, those spiritual inspirations could not survive when choked by the overwhelming, predominant thorns of theological skepticism. The ill-fated plants of inspiration could bear no fruits of divine wisdom or God contact. So this is the point where Jesus is saying, and some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. So this is like people where they have maybe a theological background, maybe they have a religious background already, maybe they're an Orthodox Christian, Orthodox Jew, or fundamentalist Christian, or a mainline Christian, right? Or fundamentalist Islam, or whatever tradition it could be. They have, some theological background to it. And so when they hear the seeds of truth, the thorns of skepticism and doubt and theological, the paradigm that they've already been convinced of is not able to allow those seeds of truth to blossom and fruit, because they're allowing their dogmas to give them that doubt and to not allow them to see. They're seeing kind of in a narrow sense instead of the essence of what Jesus is trying to teach and the essence of truth. So those are the thorns that Jesus is talking about that did not take root. And finally, other seeds of my teachings fell on the soil of mentalities furrowed and plowed by receptivity, watered with continuous goodness and regular, deep spiritual effort at meditation, and hedged in by good company, so that the animals and birds of material minds and doubts could not invade and destroy the burgeoning gardens of soul qualities. In those protected, receptive minds, the seeds of truth grew into trees laden with fruits of self-realization. These human trees, strong and sturdy, could withstand any onslaughts, while providing an increasing yield of wisdom, ever new bliss, and advancement in divine attainment of spiritual qualities, 30, 60, 100-fold. So here Jesus is saying, And some fell among, others fell onto good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. So at the end of the parable, Jesus is saying, and some of those seeds fell on the good ground and grew and increased, right? Were fruitful and multiplied. So in this point, Paramahansa Yogananda is explaining that these are the people that have, through diligence, practice, effort, time, action, continuous devotion, discipline, these people have cultivated that receptivity so that those seeds could be planted, take root, and grow into strong and sturdy trees capable of producing fruits, good fruits. So Jesus is explaining how the seeds of truth, even though they're spoken in their truth, eternal, unlimited truth, divine truth, it doesn't always take root in every one because they are not all receptive. And he's showing the different reasons, the different types of people that are not receptive and those that are. Jesus' analogy makes it plain that a true disciple, by virtue of a dedicated spiritual life, is fertile ground in which a God-sent guru's teachings can be successfully sown. When the proper seed of instruction is planted in the receptive heart soil of a sincere, determined student who nurtures it with deep daily meditation, devotion, and self-discipline in following the sadhana, spiritual practices prescribed by the guru, that seed will sprout and grow into the infinity-branched tree of God realization. What makes the difference in receptivity is whether one's desire and effort to know truth are strong. The most responsive are those who have an ardent desire for God. The parable of the sower and the seed points out to how the various good or bad habits of persons affect whether the soil of their minds is fertile or stony. Even if one feels thwarted by bad habits that are already formed, that opposition can be overcome by one's strong spiritual desire and faithful adherence to the Guru's teachings. The highest intelligence is to be able to change what needs to be changed in one's life so that continual soul progress is possible. Receptive students will definitely make progress with the help of the Guru. Resistance from bad habits of the past may make it difficult to obey the divine teachings, but if sincere students make the effort in spite of the inclination to resist, they can change. Resistance is formidable if they listen to their moods, but if instead they listen to receptively to the wisdom of their guru, who wants for them only their highest good, every seed of divine awakening he plants within them will take root in their fertile consciousness. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Jesus meant, he who is receptive and hears with spiritual understanding what I say, let him appreciate the truth of my words and live by them for complete soul emancipation. It is useless to listen haphazardly to the teachings of Jesus or give them only scant attention. A follower of Christ should be earnest and diligent like a spiritual husbandman, employing the art of growing plants of self-realization by plowing and seeding the consciousness with the proper technique of meditation and moral and spiritual living. The yield will be the fruits of divine wisdom, bliss, and complete spiritual liberation. So there you have it, you guys. the parable of the sower and the seed. Yeshua is teaching that there's different types of people. Unfortunately, not everybody has prepared themselves to receive the seed to give them that transformation. But those that do prepare themselves through spiritual discipline, through readiness, willingness, sincere seeking and devotion for God, for spiritual truth, for realization, when you receive that seed, you can receive it and let it root deeply inside of you and grow into a tree, a sturdy and strong tree that produces the good fruits. So I hope you guys got something out of that today. I hope that helped explain that parable. It's always been a parable that's kind of intrigued me, and I think the way Paramahansa Yogananda explains it really helps get to that overstanding. So many blessings. Om Guru Om. Yeshu Homoshiach. Miriam Hashakina. Yeshu Maria Ki Jai. Blessings to King Alpha, Queen Omega, the Divine Messiahs, the Lord Christ and Lady Christ, Yeshu and Mary Magdalene, Yeshu Maria, Shiva Shakti. Om Shanti. Yes. Sakshi Zion, signing out. Peace.